My wife's cheating with another man in our home made me the villain, so I took revenge, sold the house, hid money, changed locks, and walked away. I'm 51 years old, and this is the tale of how my second marriage almost destroyed my life. It might have cost me everything if I hadn't wised up. People will go to any length to use you, to hurt you, and when you defend yourself, well, suddenly you become the bad guy. Let me start at the beginning so you know how the hell I ended up holding a magnum in my own living room, telling two men to get on the floor, all because of the woman I thought I loved. I lost my first wife in a car accident. That was a decade ago, back when my daughter Sydney was only 12 years old. One day, I was a happy father and husband. The next, I was planning my wife's funeral. People say, time heals all wounds. But let me tell you something, you don't heal from that kind of loss. You learn to walk around with a hole in your chest, trying to look normal for the sake of those who rely on you. In my case, that was Sydney. I held it together for her. We supported each other for years, and by the time she turned 18, I was proud to see her head off to college in Manhattan. But then everything went quiet. My house felt eerie, an echo chamber of my own thoughts. I realized I'd been leaning on my daughter as much as she'd leaned on me. The nights were the worst. I'd get off work, come home, sit in front of the TV with dinner that tasted like cardboard, and think about everything I'd lost. I started going to the bar almost every day just so I wouldn't have to stare at the silent walls. The bar was called Mulligan's, and it became my second home around that time. I'd nurse 2 or 3 scotches in a corner booth, or sometimes right at the bar, chatting idly with the other regulars, or the bartender on duty. That's where I met Ellie. She was tending the bar, and I was probably the only patron who stuck around till closing most nights. Started out simple. She asked if I was okay one evening. I can still see her leaning over the bar, her eyes carrying a surprising warmth. She was about 11 years younger than me, 40 at the time, if memory serves. But she had a presence about her that felt oddly mature, maybe the result of tough experiences. She told me she'd been raising her 2-year-old son, Adam, on her own, after the father bailed during her pregnancy. We clicked. Loneliness is a weird magnet sometimes. She was lonely too, having no real family except an older sister. So, we gravitated toward each other. At first, it was just friendship, but she was the one who made the first move, asking me out to dinner after her shift. I said yes, telling myself I needed a distraction. Sydney was on board when she found out I was dating again. She knew how rough I had it after her mom died, so she just told me, "Dad, you deserve to be happy." I appreciated her acceptance, though I still worried about the age gap. But the truth was, I felt alive for the first time in years. After about a year of dating with plenty of late-night laughs and shared confessions, I asked Ellie if she'd marry me. We had a little ceremony, nothing fancy, no big wedding since her family situation was complicated. It was really just her sister, her kid, my daughter, and a few close friends. The first year of marriage, everything seemed great. Adam reminded me of when Sydney was little, darting around the house, giggling at everything. Ellie said she wanted to quit her bartending job so she could devote herself fully to Adam. I agreed, thinking I had a decent income from my real estate firm, which was started by my dad decades ago. Sure, I'd be the sole breadwinner, but that was okay if it meant a stable family life for us. Things began to shift little by little. Ellie liked nice things. Fair enough, who doesn't? But her tastes were a bit extravagant. Designer clothes, fancy purses, expensive shoes. I indulged her, partly because I felt insecure about the age difference, and partly because I remembered spoiling my late wife with small luxuries. Though my first wife was never into big, flashy items. Sydney visited one Christmas and basically pulled me aside, saying, "Dad, watch out, she's burning holes in your pockets." I brushed it off, but part of me knew my daughter was probably seeing red flags I was ignoring. Soon, Ellie started pressuring me to open a joint account. She said it was awkward to ask for money every time she needed a new outfit, groceries, or to pay a bill. I thought it sounded practical, so I created a joint account we both had access to. I was the only one depositing, of course, but at the time I told myself it was all for our family. Sydney came to visit again a few months later, and we ended up having a serious talk in the living room. She'd seen the way Ellie was spending. New jewelry, new shoes, and talk about renovating the kitchen to be ultra-modern. "Dad," she said, "I'm not trying to butt into your life, but I've seen how she's acting when you're not around. She's constantly on her phone, ordering things, meeting up with people who seem a bit sketchy. I heard her on the phone the other day complaining that you cut back her allowance or something." I sighed. "Sydney, she's my wife. I'm just trying to make her happy. She's been through a lot raising Adam on her own. Maybe she just wants to enjoy life after all that hardship." "Sure, but you don't see what I see. Sydney paused, looking for the right words. I overheard her telling her sister she was frustrated that you're not giving her enough money anymore. She said she'd figure out a way to squeeze more out of you. I flinched at that. Squeeze more out of me? Come on, Sid, that's a harsh way to put it. Dad, Sydney insisted, I'm serious. She's got this weird vibe about her. I hate to say it, but she's acting like you owe her, like everything you have should be hers. And it's getting worse. Well, you might just be misinterpreting her, I said, forcing a light laugh to ease the tension. Deep down, though, her words stung. I appreciate you looking out for me, but you're young, you might not fully get it. She folded her arms, offended. Fine, I'm just telling you what I see. Don't come crying to me when it blows up. I got defensive, borderline angry. Why would you say that? She shook her head. Because I'm worried about you. Mom died, and you've been alone so long that maybe you're not seeing the obvious. Just be careful, okay? I hated fighting with my daughter, but she walked away that night, eyes glistening. Neither of us apologized. In hindsight, she was absolutely right. But at the time, I clung to the fantasy that my second wife was just misunderstood. Ellie's demands got more excessive over the next year. Each time I deposited money into the joint account, it seemed to vanish faster. I decided to cut back, prompting daily arguments. You're starving me, she'd hiss, arms crossed. I'm depositing enough for groceries, bills, Adam's school fees, plus some extra. How is that starving you? You want me to beg, is that it? You think you're doing me a favor, but you know what? You're lucky I even chose you, because you sure as hell don't deserve a younger wife, especially one who looks like me, she snapped. Her words cut like a knife. I tried to keep the peace, but she only got nastier. Eventually, she started going out late with her so-called friends. I'd come home from the real estate office at 7 or 8 p.m., and the house would be empty except for Adam, sometimes watching cartoons by himself, or she'd drop him at her sister's place for days on end. Our second anniversary came and went with a forced dinner. She barely looked at me over the candlelight. I tried to talk about normal stuff, Adam's new activities at school, possibly taking a weekend trip, but she texted on her phone the whole time. The next day, she made some cryptic thread about how I was pushing her buttons, and I had no idea what she meant, but I'd soon find out. It was a Monday around 2 p.m. when I decided to leave work early. My head was pounding from an argument with a business partner, and I thought maybe I'd surprise Ellie with an afternoon lunch or something, show her we could still be spontaneous. My neighborhood was quiet as I pulled into the driveway. I noticed a strange sports car parked out front, but I assumed it might belong to a neighbor's guest. The tension in my gut told me otherwise, though. I walked up to the front door, trying to be casual. Something felt off. I reached for the doorknob, but it was locked. She almost never locked it during the day. For some reason, my heart started pounding. I fit my key in, then realized I could see through the narrow rectangle of glass next to the frame. Inside, I heard muffled voices. I froze. A pit opened in my stomach. I crept around to the side window, gently lifting the corner of the curtain. The hallway was empty. Then came a squeal of laughter from the bedroom at the far end, my bedroom. The door was half shut, but I could see shadows, multiple shadows. I moved like a man in a trance. My palms got sweaty, and the closer I got, the more I could pick out the heavy breathing, the moans, the laughter. I peered through the narrow gap of the door, my heart hammering so loud I swore they'd hear it. And there she was, Ellie, wearing something black, tight and shiny. Leather, a mask partially covering her face, leaving only her mouth and eyes exposed. The costume had holes in strategic places, enough to show me exactly what was happening. There were two men in there. One I recognized vaguely from pictures on her phone. It was her ex, Adam's father. The other was someone I'd never seen, a younger guy with tattoos up both arms. My stomach lurched. I felt sick, humiliated and furious all at once. She was with two men in my bed, laughing, moaning, cursing, and calling them names as they all used each other. I quietly stepped back, forcing myself not to barge in. It was like I had an out-of-body experience. Then I remembered that I had my old Magnum revolver in the trunk of my car, an heirloom from my dad. I never wanted to use it, but I kept it there, locked up for emergencies. In that moment, I considered what an emergency truly was. I crept out of the house, every inch of me shaking. At my car, I popped the trunk, opened the lock container, and pulled out the gun. I checked the cylinder, loaded. My mind roared. Am I really about to do this? Another voice inside me answered, yes, but calm down, don't do anything stupid. For a second, I almost just drove away. But then the anger took over. This was my home, my bedroom, my wife. Enough was enough. I re-entered the house, gun at my side. The front door squeaked and I heard frantic whispering from the bedroom. They must have heard me. I stormed down the hallway and kicked the bedroom door wide open. The sight that greeted me was surreal. My wife in that leather getup, mask still half covering her face. The two men scrambling in a panic. "Everybody on the floor," I yelled, pointing the magnum. My voice didn't even sound like mine. They froze. Ellie gasped, yanking at the zipper on her outfit. The guys fumbled to cover themselves with pillows and blankets. One of them, the unknown man, stuttered, "Hey man, chill out, don't shoot." Her ex, the father of her kid, had the nerve to scowl at me like I was the trespasser. "What the hell you doing, old man?" he sneered, trying to stand up. I cocked the hammer. "On the floor," I repeated. "Now." They dropped. I was breathing so heavily I thought I might pass out, but I forced my composure. "You," I snapped at Ellie. "Take that stupid mask off so I know it's you." She slowly lifted it, tears brimming in her wide eyes. "Baby, it's not—" "Shut up." I took out my phone with my free hand, flicked on the video camera, and pointed it at her face. "State your name, then confess exactly what you're doing." She stared, shaking. "Please don't do this. Say your name," I barked. It's Ellie," she whispered. "I'm your wife. Explain what the hell you're doing here." I took a shaky breath, making sure the phone was aimed. "Tell me you're cheating on me right now on camera." Her voice shook. "Yes, I'm cheating on you, but—" I flicked the camera toward the guys on the floor. "And these two punks? One of them is your ex Adam's father, yeah?" She nodded. "Yes, that's him. And the other is just a friend. Right?" I scoffed, deciding that was enough evidence for one day. I lowered my phone and gave them all a cold, flat stare. "You got 3 minutes to clear the hell out of my house. Understood?" That second guy practically leapt to his feet, grabbing his clothes, stuffing his legs into his pants. He yanked them on so quickly he nearly fell over. Ellie's ex was less cooperative. He sneered again. "You think you can wave your gun around and boss me?" I fired a single shot into the ceiling, the explosion echoing off the walls. Plaster dust rained down. All three of them screamed. My ears rang like a cannon had just gone off. Then I lunged forward and slapped the ex across the jaw so hard my palm stung. He stumbled back, eyes wide. "You want more?" I hissed, adrenaline surging. "Try me." He scrambled to pull his pants on, muttering curses as he backed away. Once they were dressed, if you can call it that, I gestured with the barrel of the magnum. "Get out now." They bolted. Ellie, tears streaking her face, tried to say something, but I simply repeated, "Out." She didn't even bother to get fully dressed, just threw a long coat over the ridiculous leather getup, then followed the men out the door, sobbing. I stood there, my body shaking like a leaf in a storm, gun still in my hand. I didn't know whether to cry, break something, or collapse. I barely slept that night. Instead, I packed a suitcase and headed to a cheap motel on the edge of town. The next morning, I swung by the house. As far as I knew, Ellie was gone, hopefully staying with her sister or one of her so-called friends. First, I changed the locks. Front door, back door, even the garage code. If she wanted anything, she'd have to talk to me through a lawyer. Then I gathered her clothes, her shoes, all her purses and accessories, and loaded them into a bunch of garbage bags. It started to rain, a drizzly, cold downpour that soaked me in seconds. I lined up every bag on the lawn near the mailbox, letting the rain pound them. It felt symbolic, like washing away the mess she'd brought into my life. By the time I finished, I was drenched to the bone and physically exhausted, but my mind was sharper than it had been in years. I locked up the house and went back to the motel, not caring if the neighbors saw or judged. This was war, and I was done playing nice. Late that afternoon, I was in the house to grab a couple more personal items when I heard tires screech outside. I looked out the window to see Ellie's car pulling up. She got out, frantically scanning the property, seeing all her stuff in the rain. Her hair was plastered to her face by the downpour. She started screaming obscenities at the windows, calling me names. I didn't even want to open the door, but then I noticed she had a passenger, her ex, the same jerk from the day before. He got out, marched up the front steps holding a crowbar. My blood ran cold. The nerve of this piece of garbage. "Open up," he roared, banging the crowbar on the door. "You can't just lock her out. This is her house, too." I grabbed my magnum from the side table and called through the door, "Step off my porch." He bashed the crowbar against the doorframe, cracking wood. Ellie was sobbing. "Let me in, you psycho. That's my stuff out there. You can't do this to me. I'm your wife." "Wrong," I yelled back. "You stopped being my wife the moment you decided to share that bed with two guys." I heard a sickening crack as the ex tried to wedge the crowbar into the door. That's when I flung it open, gun in hand, pointed straight at him. "If you swing that crowbar one more time, I'm aiming right for your damn crotch. This is my property. You want to test me?" He froze. The rage in his eyes flickered into fear. Ellie screamed, "Stop it! You're crazy!" "Am I?" I spat back. "Didn't look so crazy to you when you were spending my money, living in my house." The ex sized me up, crowbar trembling in his fist. Then he seemed to remember the gun. He cursed, turned on his heel, and stomped back to the car. Ellie gave me one final look, eyes gleaming with hatred. Then she ran after him and jumped in the passenger seat. They sped off, leaving the trash bags of her belongings soaking wet on the lawn. I carefully shut and locked the new door. My heart hammered. I could hardly believe what just happened, but at least she was gone. You'd think that was the end of it. Nope. About a week later, I got a knock on the door from a professional process server handing me divorce papers. Ellie alleged all kinds of things: cruelty, neglect, controlling behavior. She demanded $500,000 from a trust fund she believed would be mine. Little did she know the trust fund was never actually mine to begin with. My parents had set it up years ago, and it was legally willed to my daughter, Sydney. But Ellie had overheard something about it once when I was on the phone with the trust committee, jumped to conclusions, and apparently decided $500,000 was her ticket out of this marriage. I got myself a good lawyer, someone who specialized in contentious divorces. He read the papers, then looked up at me and said, "Let me guess. She's spending money like water, partying, hooking up with losers, and now she's after your family's assets. Am I right?"
That about sums it up, I answered.
He gave me some pointers about protecting what belonged to me and how to handle potential alimony or child support claims. I told him everything: how I tried to be good to her son, paying for Adam's new school, how she wasted it all, and how she cheated on me. He nodded, made notes, and said, "Keep every scrap of evidence. We might need it." I was exhausted by the drama. I just wanted out. If she wanted to leave me, let her. But for her to think she could drag away a fortune in the process was an insult. Instead of signing the papers right away, I let them sit. Ellie and her lawyer tried to propose an out-of-court settlement. Pay the $500,000, they said, and be done with it. I refused. Quietly, I pulled back from the joint account, closing it under the grounds of the pending divorce. She lost her mind when she got that notice, sending me vile text messages and voicemails threatening to ruin me. I saved every single one. Meanwhile, she posted pictures on social media with her new boyfriend. Yes, the same ex. Fancy restaurants, spas, beaches. I realized she was blowing the last of the joint account money on these trips, so at least it wasn't coming out of my separate funds anymore. She tried to use me for child support, but I was only the stepfather, and she'd be hard-pressed to argue I had a legal obligation to the kid, especially after all I'd done, paying for schooling that she squandered. My lawyer told me to let her keep digging herself deeper. So that's what I did the day of the first hearing. I walked in wearing a simple suit and tie. She was there in a tight designer dress, hairstyled, nails done. She had her new boyfriend by her side, smirking at me. I offered a nod. He sneered in response. As we all sat down, I could practically taste her confidence. She truly believed she'd walk out of there with $500,000. Her attorney started listing off her claims, that I was abusive, that I was controlling with finances. They painted a picture of a tyrant who refused to give his loving wife enough money for her basic needs. Then they demanded a direct chunk of my trust fund. My attorney, calm as can be, stood up and explained that the trust fund in question was never my property. It belonged to my daughter. He had all the documents to prove it, including the will from my parents, which was signed, sealed, and legally binding. As soon as he stated that, I watched Ellie's face twitch. She leaned over to her lawyer in a panic. They tried to pivot, saying, well, if the trust is off the table, she should at least get the house or shares in his business. My lawyer gave a half smile and stated that my late parents had placed the house and the business assets in the trust as well, again belonging to my daughter. I was effectively just a caretaker with no direct ownership for them to seize. Ellie's face paled to the color of chalk. She asked for a quick recess, but the judge refused. That's when she tried a Hail Mary. He's also responsible for my child. He should pay child support, Your Honor. He took on that responsibility when we married. He's that boy's father figure. The judge, a middle-aged woman with a stern expression, looked between Ellie and me. Are you the biological father of this child, sir? I shook my head. No, Your Honor. Her attorney jumped in. But morally, legally, my lawyer interrupted. The father is someone else entirely, correct? He gestured to the boyfriend, slouching in the back row, arms folded. That man is the biological father. My client has no parental rights or obligations here beyond what he chose to provide voluntarily, which he did generously until it was misused. At that point, Ellie's boyfriend shifted in his seat, glaring at me. The judge raised her eyebrows and said, then child support does not apply here. Not under these circumstances. Ellie's lawyer tried to demand spousal support, launching into a tirade about how she can't work right now because she's apparently traumatized by my so-called controlling behavior and was accustomed to a certain lifestyle. They actually used the phrase accustomed to a lifestyle. That's when I felt my blood boil. My attorney calmly introduced a collection of printouts, social media posts, vacation photos, receipts for lavish spa treatments. Every single one was time-stamped, showing her extravagant spending from the joint account. Then he played several of her voicemails and read transcripts of her texts laced with profanity and threats. The final piece was her own post, bragging about blowing through my money. The judge looked more and more unimpressed. "Miss Ellie," she said, "is it correct that you have not held stable employment for over a year and a half?" Ellie started, stammering about how she needed to focus on raising Adam. But the judge pointed out that Adam was often left with her sister or alone at home. Her arguments started crumbling. Finally, the judge said, "I'm dismissing your demands for now. You can file fresh terms if you want, but we'll need actual documented reasons for alimony, and it appears you have some personal entanglements to sort out before you can do that." Court adjourned. Ellie looked ready to kill someone. I walked out feeling something I hadn't in a long time, relief. Sure enough, about a month later, we were back in court. She'd refiled, asking for a monthly allowance of $5,000 on the grounds that she couldn't work and was dependent on me, plus child support again for Adam. My lawyer had spent the interim time building a fortress of evidence, more texts from her, more proof of her partying habits, and a clear timeline of how she'd been draining my resources for her own luxury. When we entered the courtroom the second time, her posture was slouched. She still wore an expensive dress, but the bright, cocky glow was gone. As the hearing got underway, my lawyer methodically shot down every one of her claims. Child support? Not my kid. Moral obligation? Possibly, but all evidence showed she'd wasted the money that was meant for the child. Monthly allowance? Not happening because she was proven to be verbally abusive, had extramarital affairs, and contributed nothing to the marriage financially. I felt some pity for her at that moment, remembering how we'd once shared quiet moments at the bar, how she'd confided about being abandoned by her ex while pregnant. Now, seeing her face the consequences of her own manipulations, I realized I'd never known the real woman behind that initial sob story. The judge reviewed everything, and after a tense back and forth, she declared, "Miss Ellie, you have not demonstrated grounds for spousal support. The business and home are not Mr. X's property to give. They belong to the trust. The child in question is not Mr. X's biological or adopted son, so child support does not apply. Additionally, Mr. X has provided evidence of your repeated verbal harassment, financial irresponsibility, and adulterous behavior. Therefore, your requests for monthly support are denied. I am granting the divorce on these grounds." Ellie's mouth dropped open. Her boyfriend, sitting in the back row again, turned bright red and dropped his head into his hands. The judge then asked, "Mr. X, do you wish to file any charges for extortion or emotional abuse?" My lawyer glanced at me, and I shook my head. "No, Your Honor. All I wanted was to be free of this." The judge nodded. "So noted. Then this divorce is finalized. No alimony, no property division, no child support from Mr. X. Court is dismissed." Ellie's shriek cut through the room. "No, this isn't fair. He's lying. He threatened me with a gun." Her lawyer rushed to quiet her, but she shoved him aside and lunged at me. "You bastard! You destroyed my life!" she screamed, swinging a hand in my direction. Before she could reach me, 2 security officers stepped in, grabbing her arms and pulling her back. She kicked at them, cursing me out in a stream of foul language that would make a sailor blush. The judge rapped her gavel sharply. "Order. Miss Ellie, you are in contempt. Your behavior is unacceptable. Bailiff, remove her from this courtroom." Ellie's eyes were wild, tears of rage or desperation streaming down her cheeks. "You can't do this to me. I have nothing now. Nothing." She twisted, but the guards held firm. The judge sighed, rubbing her temple. "Because of this outburst, I am imposing a $2,000 fine for contempt of court. You will also be escorted out of the courthouse immediately." She was forcibly guided out of the courtroom, yelling all sorts of empty threats and curses. People in the gallery whispered and shook their heads. Her boyfriend tried to follow, but one of the security officers stopped him until the hallway was clear. I just stood there, stunned and embarrassed, relieved and angry all at once. When the dust settled, I walked outside to find my lawyer waiting. He gave me a small pat on the back. "You did good," he said. "I've seen these go sideways plenty of times, but you kept your cool, kept your evidence in order." "She's not going to let it go," I muttered, staring at the door she'd just been dragged through. He shrugged. "She can't do much more legally. The court made its decision. She can appeal, but it's unlikely to change anything." I drove home feeling numb, Part of me felt sorry for her. She truly had nothing left, but then again, every hole she'd fallen into was one she dug herself, ignoring her own son's well-being in favor of partying and quick thrills. A few months later, I heard rumors about Ellie's downward spiral. It turned out that the ex, the father of her child, had gotten her pregnant again, a second kid with a man who'd already walked out on her once. She apparently moved into a shabby trailer on the outskirts of town, living off whatever scraps she could get, occasionally working part-time gigs when the mood struck her. Some neighbors told me they saw her once or twice at the gas station, looking worn out and anxious, a shadow of the woman she once was. Her life was unraveling as fast as she tried to seize mine, and while I felt an odd pang of regret for the child she was still raising and now a second on the way, it wasn't my responsibility. I'd done everything within reason to help her once upon a time. She chose betrayal, blackmail, and greed. As for me, I spent some time in Manhattan with my daughter, finally apologizing to her for not believing her concerns about Ellie. She forgave me, of course. That's the thing about real family. They're there for you, even when you're a fool. I sold off a portion of my real estate firm to lighten my workload, focusing on enjoying life for once, traveling, picking up new hobbies, hitting the gym. Marriage is off my radar, at least for now. I've had enough drama to last me a lifetime.